because working alone as an extrovert during the pandemic was not working for me. If you're really scared, there's something at stake. The inner child wants something. Why are we not giving it what it wants? I play 15 characters in 65 minutes, and I tell the narrative arc about my mother's death and my family not talking about it and my search to know her. I've been dancing with expectations a lot and realizing, my God, I've created these expectations. Once I let the doubts fester, they always will. Then I say, can you go sit over there? Because I have some...
Hi, I'm Ricky, co-founder and CEO of Flow Club, and welcome to the Almost Flowing podcast. Almost Flowing podcast is for anyone who wants more out of life, but is feeling a little stuck, a little overwhelmed, a little unsure about how to move forward. I talk to individuals from in and around the Flow Club community about how they get from here to there, how they get from feeling stuck to getting back on their feet and living a life in happy, productive flow. In each episode, I try to uncover their unique flow recipes, their habits, tips, insights, and lessons I've learned along the way to hopefully help you in your pursuit of a life in flow. In this episode, we talked to Susan Lieu. Susan recently published a book, The Manicurist Daughter, and it's received critical acclaim. It's been featured in the New York Times, NPR's 2024 Books We Love, and Apple's must-listen audiobook of the month. Before this book, Susan created a one-woman stage show called 140 Pounds, How Beauty Killed My Mother, and she took that on a 10-city sold-out tour, performing in front of 6,000 people, and featured and reviewed by outlets like The Washington Post and NPR. Susan is incredibly accomplished beyond all of that, and is an amazing human being and parent. I've had the great honor of co-working with her in Flow Club as she was writing and editing her book. So it was amazing for me personally to witness the fruits of all her labor. In our conversation, Susan opened up about how afraid she was to take on a big creative project like writing a book, which she's never done before, and trying to publish it before she turned 38 in honor of her late mother. If you have a big project that you really care about so much that you're afraid of it, this episode's for you. Let's dive in. Hey, Susan.
Greetings.
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 I love that. I love that greeting coming onto a podcast. Thanks for being here. It's really amazing and such an honor for you to be our inaugural guest.
Thank you. I think I've been on Flow Club more than 650 flows now. Maybe you can look it up. But I love what you guys are doing. It was game changing for me to finish my memoir and keep hustling as a solopreneur. So I'm just really excited to be part of your audio community now.
And I'm very excited to share your story to as many people as possible. And I thought a very interesting place to start would be when we were in a session together, we were working next to each other. I remember I was in many sessions with you during the book editing process. And I remember joining your session, looking at your to-dos, and you'll be saying, hey, I'm going to be editing page 271, 272. And then the next time I come around, you'll be editing page 275, 276. And I didn't know, I know a few book authors in my life, but I've never gotten the chance to just sit there and watch them do it, writing the book, editing the book. How did it feel? I want to zoom into that moment. This is before your book was published, right? So yeah. How did it feel when you were editing those pages? What was going on in your head?
Oh my God. Let's be clear. When we were even at the editing page, like I had joined Flow Club when I was just like trying to just throw stuff at the wall. I didn't even know what should be in the book. There were many times when I had writer's block and I was like, I'm so effed. This is not going to happen. Because for me, the premise of my work is that my mom died from a botched tummy tuck when I was 11 years old and she was 38. And my family has never talked about it to this day. It's been 3 decades because there's just been so much shame and silence around that. And so my book is like about how is intergenerational healing even possible when your family doesn't want to talk about it, right? So that's the context of what I'm even dealing with is how do I talk about secrets that have been repressed, that I don't even have clear memories of, and somehow make it an entertaining page turner that has a beginning, middle, and end, when in my real life, it doesn't even feel like there's an end, right? Or the middle is so murky. So when I first started Flow Club, I had gotten the book deal at this point, and then I was just sitting there going like, how can I publish this book while I'm still 38 as an homage to my mother? I knew when it was really due. I knew the real due date of like when I had to get to my publisher, but I was still sitting there going, I don't even know how to write. I don't even know what I'm doing, right? It was just such a big project. By the time you were starting to see me doing, I'm editing, like fine tuning and like really, like that's like down the line. Like that's when I've already jumped a lot of other hurdles, right? Because I think that when I'm writing, there's two types of writing, right? It's like the creative flowing process and then like Wolverine claws editing, like how is this all streamlining together? Did I make it a page turner so you want to read the next chapter, right? / I also don't have an MFA in creative writing. I have an MBA. Okay. So wrong thing to invest in, but actually maybe it helped me out in the future, which we'll also get to of my future Flow Clubs of planning my book tour. So anyways, to answer your question, it's just, I came to Flow Club out of desperation because working alone as an extrovert during the pandemic was not working for me. I just found so much struggle in just trying to get my butt in a seat, right? That's one of the big things about writing is just sit down and start because there's so much anxiety leading up to it. There's so much pressure around it. And then also I had this like actual deadline of, am I going to get this done? And so when I came to Flow Club, I was just like, that was my Hail Mary. Because at first I was like, $40 a month? I don't know. But like for me, honestly, I was like, I need accountability. I need to have a reason to show up somewhere. And if I've said I'm going to be the host and I'm not there, that's messed up, right? And so I needed a way to hack my extroverted self, to hack my ADHD self, and to hack this like crazy thing that I was trying to do that I didn't know what to do about.
Yeah. But how did that feel? What were the things that you were saying to yourself, those moments of self-doubt when you're trying to put words on the page, or when you're editing and you already have something and you're like, well, I have to give this back to my editor?
Yeah. I'm saying things like, you're screwed. You suck. This is never it's never going to get done. We're effed. We're effed, everybody. It just felt too much. And I think when I'm alone, left to my own devices in a giant ass Google Doc, it is so lonely and scary and isolating. And then when I was just, okay, I have social accountability here. And that's what I learned in business school too, is if you want to accomplish a goal, if you can publicly declare it, like say on Facebook, like I'm going to run the Vancouver Marathon, everybody, then you feel more embarrassed if you don't. Because before I was doing the Pomodoro method on my own with the 25-minute timer. But then was I really that efficient? Did I really take a break? Was I just scrolling on my phone and cheating? There's something really valuable about eyeballs looking back at me. And then, if anything, let me break down this huge project into something so concrete, which is I'm literally just going to edit 2 pages right now. And a stretch goal is like 1 more page. Because it is so easy to write in your task list, write a book and get nowhere with it and always feel like a failure, always feel that it's just so impossible.
How did you even know how to break it down? Like, I assume a book of this magnitude, it was probably your first experience.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So when you got the deal, I mean, you had to figure out how to get the book deal to begin with. And then once you have a deal, you have a deadline, you have a small budget, and then you have to produce this thing. Was there a map? Like, how did you come up with this map?
The answer is yes and no. In my book proposal, there's 80 pages. And it includes, what's the book about, why you to write it, what's your marketing plan, and here's a sample chapter. And then also a chapter outline, which is, okay, how's the book going to run? And so I had like maybe 30 chapters and 1 or 2 lines about each one. And I was like, this is what it's going to look like. And so when I get the deal, and my editor, it was a great deal. She is the founder of the imprint Celadon, which is a high-end imprint of Macmillan. And she actually edited Pachinko. Okay, she's been in the industry for decades. Getting her as my editor was a golden ticket. Anyways, so I get the deal and I'm like, all right, Deb, so do you want to look at the chapter outline together? Can we brainstorm about it? Or what do you think? And she goes, no. And I was like,
Just can't do it.
it was like a period at the end of the sentence. I'm like, wait, what do you mean no? And she's, now you're just going to go write about your family. And I was like, okay, well,
Yeah,
the Zoom's
the book
over now.
proposal, the book proposal was the map, was the little outline. Do it.
Yes, but it was, you're the creator of your family story, go for it. And I was just like, oh my God. And I remember I started just writing about my family. I sent her some pages. She's like, this is schizophrenic. And I'm like, damn it. Because I've never taken a writing class, like besides like college writing. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I was spinning for maybe 3 or 4 months. And me and my agent knew that she's a queen in the editing space, which is she's give me something when it's good. And that's all she said. You know what I mean? She wasn't
That
going to hold my
pressure.
hand. But it's from the editors I chose from. I knew I was going to be, there was like, I got 4 offers. And one was ride or die sister energy. One is older, cool cousin who's gay and has written his own stuff that has already been adapted. Cool mentor, but cool guy. He'll take you to the parties. We'll do our first cake stand together. And then I had mommy energy, who's really stern and was like, give me excellence. And I was like, this is a mother-daughter
That's the
story.
one.
I'm going with her.
That's the
Yeah,
one.
you know, which meant that I was probably going to need support. So I knew that I was going to probably hire it's called a book doctor. It's not a ghostwriter. It's someone who has been in the editing space, who's a therapist around like your anxieties around writing, and also like look at a whole bunch of googly gunk and then highlight a couple things and be like, let's double click on this. And then you'll be like, okay, I'll see you next week. So there was a point where I started engaging with this person for about 6 months. And I learned how to write through her. But also I learned to believe in myself through her. And then we get to the summer before the book is due. And then she was like, I'm not going to take any more of your money. I'm like, no, take my money. She's like, you know what to do. You're on your own now. And then that's when I really turned to Flow Club, because I was like, I felt so alone. And then I realized I was like, I still need like social accountability, but I need to put one step in front of the other, and that's going to look like a task box.
Yeah. It sounds like you knew what you will respond to. Kind of just going back, like, is this sort of like your model, like going back to all the projects that you've done? You kind of just like, you know, say you want to do it, you find a goal, you find a reason, you find a deadline, and then you don't know how, but you know that if you put a goal out there, like you're going to figure out your way there. I want to talk about your play. I want to talk about activism. I want to talk about all these things that you've done. But all these things sound so hard. They sound so hard, and most people wouldn't even know where to start. And you seem to have the ability to just, like, I don't know where to start, but I'm gonna start, because I know the goal is good, or I know I want what the end. Like, what? Where does that come from? How does that?
Yeah. Okay, so I have 2 answers to that. The first one is my mom died when I was 11. And so I remember finally going to a therapist in college, and I was just like, God, help me make sense of the world. And she was like, you don't trust that things are going to happen as they should, or you don't think rationally, because you are like Chicken Little. You were wondering, is the sky going to fall? Is the sky going to fall? And actually, when you're 11 years old, the sky did fall. And so you have trouble trusting that things are going to work out. And I was like, yep, story of my life. And she said, so that's why, like, your brain development at 11. And so I've been tainted with this anxiety. Things are not going to work out. And I've thought about death for a long time. And I realize we're all mortal. We are going to die. So can I live like I'm mortal? And so I live with a sense of urgency of just let's go. I will say I'm an Aries ox. So that's like a double fire sign. It's like very stubborn. I'm going to brute force my way into this. Like in general, the time I was born, all that is in general. I'm just like, this is what I want to do. Fine. We're going to make it happen. So for me, I do have huge manifesting energy, and I have had this all my life. Right. But I would say the turning point was with my mom died. And from then on, I was just like, all right, you want to make something happen? Go make it happen, because you don't know how much time you got left. Right. this is also in the shadow and observing of my parents who ran a nail salon, right? We came to America in the 80s. We didn't have any money. We were all self-made people, right? And so it's, if you want something, go make it happen. If I wanted to do an after-school program, I had to forge my parents' signature and apply for a scholarship. You know what I mean? That has just been my life. / even when I wanted to do that, my dad thought I was so disobedient wanting to do community service and student government. It's like also like being Vietnamese American, right? And being children of immigrants and your parents not really understanding. So there's that to me. The time I was born, my life circumstance. I think another thing for me that I've lived by is if you're scared, if you're really scared, there's something at stake, right? It's important to you. And so for me, there was this moment, I had just graduated from Harvard. My Vietnamese sucked. And I really wanted to learn Vietnamese. And so I did at school, but so I could finally read and write like a third grader. And I thought, what do I do with my life? And I was like, ooh, should I become like a human rights lawyer? What should I do with my life? And I was like, you know what's really scary? To go back to my motherland. I'm freaked out. I've never felt Vietnamese enough. I also really wanted to understand the story of my mom, which my family wouldn't talk about. And I'm like, maybe I can kill like 3 birds with 1 stone and like figure out like my career too along the way, right? And because I just knew that this is terrifying, so that must mean I should do it. And there have been many moments like that with moving back to America to work on the chocolate company with my sister. We have a company called Sokola Chocolatier. And it was like, I was like, oh, this sounds like a crazy idea. Let's do it. And pivoting to become an artist 6 years ago, I'm like, this kind of makes no sense. I have business school loans. We just got a mortgage. But I was like, there's something here. There's a fire in my belly around this. And I feel like I must do this. And because if I don't like living with regret, because I don't know when I'm going to die. And same thing also about pivoting to stand-up comedy 12 years ago. I just was like, there's something here. And also, if the Mayan calendar is real and we all are going to die in the world, I don't want to live with regret. And so that's been my life philosophy is regret minimization.
Yeah.
Right? And part of it is folded in with what is really exciting and what's at stake. But also I can't really bank on me dying when I'm 100 years old with people surrounded, my children surrounding me, and I like fall asleep into a nice slumber and there's flowers everywhere. Like that's not going to happen to everybody, right? And I read obituaries all the time in the New York Times. And I'm so morbid. But I'm always reading like when hella rich people in tech die in their 40s and 50s. It's kind of, it doesn't even matter how much money you have. You're gonna die, and you might not die at your perfect 100, right? So go do the thing that scares you because you don't know. So live like you're mortal, Ricky.
Yeah. That is so inspiring. And how did, when you, I want to go back to the thing that you said was transformative. Like there were a lot of things that were transformative, but you specifically pointed out going to Vietnam.
Yeah.
And trying to get back in touch. I'm sure it's beyond language. It's family, it's identity. There's a lot of things kind of tangled up with that trip. And that's why, and there's a lot of fear. What happened when you got there? Like you're a third grade speaking ability, I assume at that point. You're a third grade Vietnamese girl showing up in Vietnam. Like, was it as scary as you thought?
It was so funny. This got cut out of the memoir. But at the time, my high school sweetheart is an American white boy. He moved with me to Vietnam, and he actually got his passport for the first time in his life to move with me to make the relationship work. And I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to do a human rights law. And then we move up to Hanoi, and I'm Southern Vietnamese. And when I arrived to Vietnam, all my relatives in Saigon were like, oh my God, you're going to go to Hanoi in a little bit? Because they've never been, and there was the war. So they were just, what are you going to eat? And I was like, whatever else they eat them there, right? So they were like internally within my family there, they were like freaked out.
They're scared for you.
They were scared for me. I set up a human rights law internship, and I started, and then it's like real. They're like, you want to be middle management? I'm like 22. I'm like, what? And then also I feel like the guy who's like running in the shop is like corrupt and sleaze. And I was like, ew, this is so, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? So I actually quit. because something feels so not right. Like something feels very wrong. And then I create another internship through USAID. But that goes back to my manifesting power, right? Because I already missed the deadline. You have to apply through Washington, D.C. But I had hanging around there. I try to network my way into it. I've met 8 people for coffee. They're like, check back in next month. Then they're like, hey, Susan, you want an internship? Do you want to work with cacao farmers in Vietnam? Which is interesting because I started a chocolate company when I was in high school. Do you want to learn about the supply chain of cacao? Or do you want to help spread Wi-Fi in really rural areas? I'm like, oh, both are really interesting. But wouldn't it be full circle to work
Yeah.
with cacao farmers?
Yeah.
And so I did that and then at this point, boyfriend is now ex-boyfriend, he's watched enough burned DVDs of Sopranos that he like bought bootleg, and he's like, I gotta go home. I'm like, okay. We really try to make, it's like our 8th time trying to make the relationship work. So I'm like, bye. So anyways, when I rearranged this new internship, I moved back to Saigon, and then that situates me to live with aunt number 4. So then now I'm living with my maternal aunts on my mom's side. Boyfriend is now ex-boyfriend. And I'm sitting there and I get to live there for 8 months. And really, like, it's different when you come for 2 weeks. But when you live there for 8 months and you just feel the daily rhythm of life, where it's not so celebratory, you have to have a big banquet. Like, it's just daily life. It was great. I would find routines because I really need to exercise. So I'd go running. It was like terrible places to run, but it was like, whatever. That was ways for me to explore the neighborhood. I loved all the different food I got to eat. I got really close with my cousin. But I got to tell you, I still felt othered in Vietnam, for sure. Because yes, I could read and write like a 3rd grader. But when I would talk to people, they'd be like, oh my God, you sound like a baby. Like a toddler. Because there's so many pronouns in Vietnamese language, but like at home, like with my siblings, we would just speak English. So like I never was doing that. So I would tell like my younger cousins, I would call me little baby, and they'd be like, dude, what's wrong with you? Because I was always a little baby in my family. But the point is, I used to get kicked out of clothing stores. So I would go in and they'd be like, you're like a triple XL. Get out of here. Like I was literally like a size 4 or size 6. But like in Vietnam, I'm a big girl. And so I always felt, oh my God, like I don't fit in anywhere. Like in America, I lived in a all-white community in my teenage years. And it was just like, I always felt like I didn't really belong, besides the fact that I'm like really intense energetically. And then in Vietnam, I got to a point where I was just like, my Vietnamese is okay enough. I know agricultural terms now. And you know what? I am Vietnamese American. And it was like this acceptance that I'm just never going to be Vietnamese. And that's okay. And you know what? I am who I am. But at least I dispelled this big myth of what it meant to be Vietnamese. Because I just started meeting all types of expats that were there that were also on their like kind of homecoming journey. And I was just like, okay, my Vietnamese does suck, but it's actually better than this person. Or you know what? I've been here for a bit of time and I know what I need to know. Now, did my family finally tell me stories about my mother? No. Did I go to find her first suitor and went to his house and he like cried to me while he's chain smoking cigarettes and just kept repeating the same 3 lines? Is that in the book? Yes. So it was like I was on this quest to know my mother. But of course, hero's journey, I learned about myself.
I think a lot of people would listen to your story and maybe just think to themselves like, no, I'm not as adventurous as Susan. I'm not as, open to these experiences. I'm not as like courageous as Susan.
Okay.
Yeah. And that would totally be fine. But what would you say? Were you more adventurous than the average?
Yeah, I went to Burning Man when my sophomore year in college or junior year,
Huh.
and I found a ride from somebody on Craigslist, and I wasn't sure if he was a cop or if he wanted to do it with me. It was so weird. It was so dangerous and stupid. But I felt this, I was like, oh, I gotta go to Burning Man. And also, I don't know, as you'll read in the memoir if you do, I also found myself in a Korean yoga cult, and I was just trying to gun it to reach the top of that because I wanted belonging in my family so bad, but I found belonging. I would say I'm more of an intuitive decision maker. I'm an ENFJ, also Barack Obama. And the intuitive part, it's just once it starts screaming, I can't turn it
Not
down.
follow it. Yeah.
Yeah, and also sometimes I'm going to have to go make those mistakes, right? But if I don't follow it, then I get anxious about that or resentful about that. But yes, I am extremely adventurous because I'm a big risk taker and I don't have a lot of inhibition. Here's a dumb story. I'm so intense with people that I have been cut off at a bar 5 times before I even had one drink. They'd be like, sorry, ma'am. Sorry, I can't serve you. And I was like, no, you don't
'Cause
understand.
I haven't had any.
I just start at this level. You know what I mean? It's just, can we recalibrate for me? But
The bar's the only place that will cut you off.
believe it. And it's funny because drinking actually doesn't do anything for me. It just makes me depressed. So it's
already-
fine. But I don't have inhibition, right? Because I'm sitting here going, okay, can we just acknowledge the BS here and let's just move it forward? Now, you do not have to be courageous like me. But what I would urge you to do is that when you have this calling, when you have this voice, I don't think those desires go away. I think the volume of it starts to get dialed down when you continue to now listen to it.
Yeah.
But guess what? It still persists, and you not doing something about it will show up in an ugly way in your life somewhere else, right? It's maybe your thing is, I really like to crochet funny, snarky things. And I'm like, cool. Or maybe you're like, I'm an ultra marathon runner. Or maybe it's not even achievement based. Maybe it's like, hey, I really want to learn more about Taoism. Or I just really want to be a really kind stranger and do a random act of kindness every day. I guess all these are really action based still. I'm such an action person. But it's about listening to the calling. Because
Yeah.
I think when we continue to feed the calling, give it oxygen, give it nutrition, it activates more in your life and more energy comes to you. And I think you can live a more exciting, fulfilling life. But only you in your heart will know if that's true or not, right?
Your
only
soul.
Yeah.
Your soul can feel it. Your soul can feel it. And if you just stop and you notice, oh, the volume, I've been turning down the volume. I've been picking up all these things that don't matter so that I can suppress this thing that I really want to do. The volume's getting smaller. It's still there, but if you just stop and you listen to it, you're like, oh, something is missing. I still hear it a little bit faintly.
Right.
Yeah.
The inner child wants something. Why are we not giving it what it wants? What's that about? And there's some juicy uncovering there. So no, you don't need to go to Burning Man. No, you don't need to go into space. You can just listen intently and take one small action to give it what it wants. And then that's the richness in the discovery. And that, I think, is the juiciness of life.
So I think what you also have, being who you are, what you must have is some way of picking the pieces back up and put it back together. Because you're, like you said, you're good at, if I feel it, I have to do it. So I do all these things, but then inevitably, I get hurt, I fail, something doesn't go my way. But then you seem to always have the ability to kind of put it back together and then do the next thing. So that putting it back together, you've had a lot of reps doing that, I'm sure. Even just from this conversation, I hear lots of leaps that you make. And I admire all the leaps, but I've made lots of leaps myself. I know when sometimes you trip, sometimes you fall flat on your face, and then you need to come back. You need to stand up again, pick yourself back up again. And that's a skill, because the more you trust that skill, the more leaps you can make. And I wonder if there's anything you can share about how you've learned to put the pieces together, everything from energy, confidence, getting motivated again, feeling good about yourself again, self-care routines, all the stuff that you've learned over the years.
Yeah. First one is exercise. My God. I used to exercise because I always wanted to lose 15 pounds. Guess what? I'm not losing the 15 pounds. It's been 20 years. But I exercise for my mental health, for my stability, but also to clear the energy because, we do get weird emails that are passive aggressive. What was that about? We do get these things that kind of don't feel okay or maybe put pause on things. And I'm just cool, just cycle it out. And that is for me with exercise. And so when I plan out my calendar now, the first thing are classes. one thing I've learned about myself is I'm really competitive. I can, like, my husband can work out on his own and have a whole, like, routine and, like, a ski training program. He's tried to make me download these apps. I'm like, bro, no. There's no motivation here because there's no people. And also, like, I don't have to keep up with an instructor. And so I know that about me. And so I have a gym. I know my favorite classes, and it just goes non-negotiably on my calendar. And also, I'm a mom of a 4-year-old, and so I have to make it work with all pick up and drop off. But that's now non-negotiable. I think in my 20s, I was just, yeah, I should go for a run. Thought. I want chips. Thought, let me get high. It was never the basis of the first block in how I look at time, right? But like now with exercise, it's like it has to land in the calendar, and my support team knows they have to plan around it, and it's non-negotiable. Because I also, if anyone would be like, hey, do you want to record this podcast or do this thing? Even if I had something planned for myself, I would be like, oh yeah, I'll plan around it. I'll make it work. And now I'm just like, no, Power Hour with Courtney is sacred because I know I feel so much better. And also, like, when I'm like working out, like I start to see what I really need to do for the day.
What is it? Is it like hit? Is it
mostly
like
hit
yoga?
stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, it's mostly hit stuff, TRX straps, and then I now I'm working with a personal trainer too, so I can do crazy squats and stuff. You know, my squat form is amazing. She's always, your legs are ripped.
It's in your genes.
I know. I was like, yeah, because we squatted in the rice paddies, baby. But so what I'm trying to say is exercise is so foundational, right? Because then when I exercise, then I eat better, and then when I eat better, then like brain function is better, right? Like my digestion is better. My sleep is better,
like
right?
Like an anchor. Like if everything falls apart, that still is together.
That
you
is
still exercise. You fed your body. You fed your your soul just by going to that.
Because it's the mind-body connection, right? It's so intertwined. And so I have to start with that. And when my life is a wreck, and I used to, oh my God, for New Year's resolutions, I feel like in my 20s, every single year, it was like, be vegan, work out 3 to 4 times a week. And it was like, and no alcohol. I knew that I needed to do that, and then I wouldn't do it, right? But now in my late 30s, I'm not full on vegan, but I'm way more dairy free and alcohol free, and because my health depends on it, and everything else follows from there. It's especially with a kid. I have more limited time and energy. So now I have to be way more choosy about it. And before I used to be like, I used to count the numbers of hours in a day and try to make it as efficient as possible when I was in my 20s. But I would spiral. But I would be like, really, what am I doing with my time? And then I would like not use it well. But now it's no, actually, there's a finite amount of time, especially with a kid. And I could not justify exercise in my 20s. But now I do justify exercise in my 30s. But yeah, it's a forcing function for everything else to work together and click together.
It's so interesting because you have a 4-year-old, you have limited energy, and yet you block off the exercise. You make it even more restrictive for you. Like you probably could use those 2 hours in the morning or 1.5 hours in the morning for something else, like given the amount of responsibilities that you have and dreams that you have. But yet you purposefully block it off.
Oh, yeah, totally, 100%.
I think I want to talk a little bit about the play that you did.
Yeah.
Which eventually became a book as well. How did you prepare yourself emotionally to deal with such emotional topics on the day-to-day level, on a day-to-day basis? Like I'm sure producing the play and like creating it was a whole ordeal, but then you have to put it on and you have to channel emotionally and then I've watched parts of it, and then you have to, all the reactions, even if you've done it 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times, the reactions of the audience that you receive is their first time, is raw. And so you have to connect with that. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
But so I want to know how you prepare yourself, how you recover afterwards to do it all again.
I play 15 characters in 65 minutes, and I tell the narrative arc about my mother's death and my family not talking about it and my search to know her, and also me tracking down the plastic surgeon to avenge my mother's death. That's all happening, and it's sad, and it's funny, and it's 65 minutes. When I was just trying to figure out the show and do all of this, it's because, one, I was a failed stand-up comic, and there was a part of me that wanted to be back on stage. Like, I was in my orbit on stage, and I knew, like, before I could become a mom, I really needed to face my own demons around the cowardice that I was experiencing, right? Like, how can you tell your kid be what you want in life if I didn't myself, right? So I knew I really had to address that, and that's part of the impetus of putting on the one-woman show, is because I was like, hecklers don't come to theater, right? That'd be too much of an asshole move.
You wanted to put yourself back on stage because you
Yes.
thought you were booed off stage.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I mean,
as
I
a
was heckled
comic.
off stage. I was
heckled
heckled.
off stage. Yeah.
And it's like, in 6 months, I was doing great in stand-up comedy. I headlined at the Purple Onion. I was at Caroline's on Broadway. Like, I was doing well for myself.
Yeah.
For someone just exploring a hobby.
Yeah. And people only heckle when you're kind of there. They wouldn't heckle nobody. Right?
Yo, it was
Well,
a
I
charity
mean-
show. It was awful. The point is, I wasn't prepared for it. And so I had left the microphone for 3 years. When I come back, in terms of just, I just need to get the performance wiggles out of me before I become a mom. Like, I gave myself 2 years to just explore it.
Mm.
I think that context is really important to know, which is, it was terrifying to me. I was afraid something was at stake. And I just wanted to just face it and be with it so that I know I was done with it. But little did I know I wasn't done with it, right? The more I went on stage to talk about my mother's story, which I never intended to, the more I felt so alive than I had ever felt. And I would realize how much I had been The Walking Dead, right?
Yeah.
Since my mom died, in terms of not living a part of my life. And when you were like, how did you prepare yourself emotionally for all this? Because I would do all this writing and I'd be excavating all these very traumatic memories in my life. It's like, I was so naive. I didn't have the foresight to be like, hey, Susan, like, this is going to be like really intense for you emotionally. I was just like, I felt like I was suppressed and repressed for so long that it needed to come out. It was at this point where I was forced to bloom. It was more painful to be stagnant. I had to have this form of a release, and I didn't know what it was really going to look like. I didn't anticipate I would be fired from my corporate America job. And then I'd be at a crossroads where I'm like, should I go all in on this performance stuff? And then I was like, yeah, I should, right? Now, and I can talk about that later, which is I had metrics for myself. I knew how much I needed to make in that year. And I also started like a nonprofit consulting arm business and had my own clients so that I could get cash money to pay for my theater. Okay, so there's also that. But going back to your original question of, okay, so now the 5th iteration of the show, like I've been like workshopping it, and the 5th iteration is what I eventually take on a 10-city national tour. But the night before I'm going to do the show for the first time, I have all these amazing designers doing the lighting, the sound, an amazing director. Everyone came together to make this possible. And I got to say, after we went to blackout, the show was over. It like exceeded my expectations, right? I got a standing ovation. People were laughing and crying with me. I call it therapeutic theater. We were together holding each other, right? And you're right. How do I get so raw and so intimate every single night and play it as if I've never played it before, right? So there's a lot of things that I do. I have a very strict discipline when I'm performing. If I'm performing 2 weeks prior and during performance, I actually am pretty much vegan. And no alcohol, no drugs, right? Like, it's clean. I'm working out. I wake up at 6 a.m. and I run the entire show. Like, I do it really quickly. I mumble it because it's 65 minutes, so it's a lot of words. And all I need is a chair when I perform. But where I look, how I look, when I change characters, like where my mouth is moving and what side and direction, I run the whole show and I mumble it. And I go as fast as I can in the morning. Then, and also like during the day, I don't do computer work. I'm not trying to be on meetings. Nope. It's like empty. I show up to the theater 2 to 3 hours in advance. I run the whole show again on the stage and I mumble my way through the whole thing. And then I sit down, I put on my clothes, and then I visualize the whole show again. And then I put on my makeup, and then I do 40 squats, and I'm doing a lot of physical movement stuff. And then now my stage manager is like, okay, we're 30 minutes to show, 10 minutes to show. And then, and I say this in my memoir, then I look into the mirror and I try to close the door. And then I say my own rendition from Cool Runnings. Like, I see pride, I see power, I see a badass motherfucker who don't take shit from nobody. And I say it 3 times. And then I say, I thank you. I love you. I forgive you. And then I say, Mom, let's do this. And then I'm at the curtain. And then I visualize 11-year-old Susan getting ready for volleyball tryout that day. I visualize 38-year-old mother packing for her plastic surgery for that day. Then we go on stage.
How you recover afterwards to do it all again?
So then after this entire routine to get ready for the show, I do the show. I laugh. I cry. Together, the audience were together.
Right.
And then I hang out for another hour and a half and hang out. And it's like a wedding and a funeral. And people are like telling me their trauma. They're telling me everything that they haven't told anybody else. And I'm like holding space and signing posters and selling merch. I go to bed. I wake up. There is like a 40-pound blanket on my body. Like I actually cannot get up. There's a metaphorical blanket where I am depleted. I am so depleted. And guess what? Shows, they run 4 days in a row, right? So then I wake up and then I rehearse at 6 a.m. again.
6
right?
a.m.
But the thing is, that's why it's like I don't do computer time. I don't get invited into people's drama. If there's something I have to repair with people or solve or fix, I just wait until it's a Thursday to Sunday run. And then I just wait till the week starts, and Monday through Wednesday, I'll do more work. But those days of performance and the recovery afterwards, I have to keep it really clean and sacred because it's so exhausting and so intensive. But the thing is, the interplay with the audience is so rich. Like when I'm performing, I feel them in, and every night, there are some really intense lines in this show. But it has to be true for me. And so the moments where I cry are actually really different every single night. I'll really like hone in on a scene and a line will hit me in a different way because I'm trying to find it fresh and hit it. It needs to hit me in a different way, right? Or because of whatever energetically is happening in the audience, I'll receive that and then a different moment will hit me differently. It has to be as honest as possible. And so if I always cry at the scene where my mom's in a coma, that's not going to work, you know? So it's not about crying at the right time. It's about feeling the truth of it as 11-year-old Susan, as Susan who's trying to become a mom and find out the truth. And it's to find the truth in it that for me every night. And sometimes different characters I play will speak to me differently that night. And it could also be what's happening in my real life with the real characters, right? I think that's the coolest thing about theater that I never really knew growing up because we were poor and maybe a field trip I'd go to Nutcracker or Shakespeare and I'd be like, why am I falling asleep? Like theater sucks. So like I never thought the arts was that cool. That's my actually big secret truth.
Also, we're Asian immigrants.
Right. So it was not reflected in us. We were not represented, right? So all of a sudden I realized, and my Vietnamese friend started taking me to theater. Honestly, she took me to theater 1 year before I started doing it. Like I would just go and sit there and be like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. That looks cool. And so that's the cool thing about theater is it's live. And you don't know what's really going to happen because it is an amoeba that's reacting to what is actually in the room. So that's the exciting thing about theater, and also the exciting thing of transforming me every night and transforming the audience is that if you go to my Thursday show, it could be different from my Sunday show. It actually could be, even though it's the same exact lines. But at the end of the day, it is about me, it's about the audience, it's about my mother. And if it's not any of those things, you're Monday through Wednesday, baby. I cannot pay any attention to you. You cannot suck any of that energy from me. And I'm going to just focus on exactly that. And we are going to execute it. And I'm going to give myself everything I have. I'm going to give it to you. And then we're going to see what happens. So that's that's emotional management. And like during the day, people want to call me. I'd look at it. I'd be like, I can't. Because I was so sensitive and so tender. And that's why I eat vegan.
Yeah. Creating space. You gotta leave all that space for yourself. Why is it important to thank yourself and to tell yourself that you love yourself?
Because if I don't do it for me, no one else is going to do it for me. If I don't do it for me, I can't do it for somebody else. And I have been chasing awards, words of affirmation, praise all my life, right? I've wanted the approval of my parents, right? And
Yeah.
never really got it. And guess what, Ricky? Nothing's enough. And when I get an accolade, I get something else, it feels good. It's a nice hit. And then I'm on to the next thing. Or I'm comparing myself of what they got and I didn't. And it's just, it's the desire is endless, right? Like it's Buddhist, right? Like we have insatiable desires. And so for me, it doesn't matter if on the cover of my book, Eve Ensler, who is one of my role models, now she's known as V, she praised my book. She's like my hero. And like when I got that, I was like over the moon. And then the next day I was on the next thing. You know what I mean? There's something I'm really working really hard on savoring and being gentle with myself and giving myself grace. Because I never really ever have. And I think that's like my challenge right now is to like really like dwell and enjoy my fucking hard work. But I think as a child of immigrants, Vietnamese immigrants, it's just, the only person who's going to help you is yourself. Go get them, tiger. And so it's like, I've been my own tiger mom, and it's self-defeating at times.
Yeah, it is. And so how are you working on that now? What are some of the things that you're trying? What are the things that didn't work, maybe? And then what are the things that might be sticking?
Yeah, okay, so the Korean yoga cult did not work. It was cool, but did not work. I have therapy every 2 weeks. That's maintenance. I have a women's group that I go to on the monthly, and it's like a lot more ritual. And it's 6 hours. And
Whoa.
it's like drumming and singing and thanking the grandmothers and forest bathing and potlucking
Oh, that's so cool.
and a lot of deep listening.
Yeah.
But it's space to fall apart. It's space to be. No one really cares about accomplishments there. Like
Yeah.
it's more about just being with each other.
Yeah.
I'm really good at doing, but I read the Tao of Pooh earlier this year, and it was like, do without doing. And I was like, huh? And I sit in silent meditation retreats. My first one was a 10-day one. I didn't even know how extreme that was, but I
Yeah.
loved it. You know, like I know I need to get quiet and listen. I know that my mind is like making my misery, but my ego is always subservient to the mind. And there's always more. There's always more that I want. And so when I can put things in my schedule, like super hippie stuff, where it's just a space for women to just be and love each other up and allow and hold, I come back from that so nurtured and so, yeah, like I feel in my tigress energy because I allowed myself to be in the feminine and to soften because I don't do that enough. So there's that. I would say morning journaling is always really great for me just to dump worry out. I'm an external processor. I feel like when I have something for it to go out, for it to cycle through, that's also really healthy for me.
And is that because in the morning you start to anticipate, you start to think about all the things that you have to do and all the problems that might come your way?
I used to just scroll in the morning. I used to be on Instagram, check some messages there, see if I needed whatever. And it was like that in the news cycle has wrecked me.
Right.
It has wrecked me. And I don't do that now. I'm trying to get my matcha latte, my instant matcha latte. I get to, if I can, journal or I use the Waking Up app, meditation. I like that one.
Yeah.
And try to carve out that time before my kid is up and before everything, everything starts spiraling. So that is great if I can do that. I will say one of my saving graces has been, I have an iPhone and I just have 15 minutes on social media and then it kicks me off. And then if I want to get an extension, I have to go up to my husband and be like, punch in your code. Because I have no self-control, man. I got no self-control. I do those dopamine hits. And so that has given me back a lot of time. I would say Flow Club, as a host, I'll do 2 60-minute sessions in a row and then have an hour break and then another 60-minute. And what I try to do in that break is eat or go on a walk.
Yeah.
A 5 to 10-minute walk is so transformative because it's just like there's so much happening in the mind, and especially looking at screens and tabs and stuff. And then when I go on a walk and I try not to look at my phone, I'll be like, I get the clarity and the truth of either a hard decision or like what I'm supposed to do next. Because actually, I think that's what a lot of trouble I have is prioritization. Like, I have executive functioning problems. I tell my husband, Marvin, I'm like, I think I have ADHD. I think I need to get meds. He's, so you want performance enhancing drugs? And I was like, yes, that's what I want. I want that. And anyways, I'm still trying to figure it out and I'm experimenting. And actually the answer actually might be no. It might be like not good. I've tried a couple of things and I'm like, I don't know if it's actually serving me. Because my psychiatrist was like, what about Ritalin? Let's slow everything down because you're like you're spinning too fast.
Right.
And I was like,
You're like,
ew, I don't like this. Or it like my sleep is impacted. And so really it just might be continue to hack my tendencies, right? Which is part of that is, okay, I work in a basement by myself. I don't have coworkers. I have a couple coworkers, but I don't have a manager I can blame, right? And then, so how do I create more accountability in my life, right? And also, how do I make sure I'm actually doing what's actually going to be helpful instead of kicking around a couple of pebbles? What's my frog or what's my boulder I need to actually like move today, right? And get honest about that and to feel the fear and do it anyways.
Yeah, this is really useful, I think, just to hear someone like you talk about the different things that you're trying on and putting down when it doesn't serve you, and just like picking up new things and try new things to try to see what serves you. I think that's really informative. I think we're probably coming up to the end of the time. I do want to talk about what you're working on now, and I also want to bring in your role as a parent to the equation a little bit, because you have to balance. You're constantly working on being a parent, and you have all these other things that you're pursuing. Tell me about how you like manage to balance. Like, what are you working on now, and then how you aim to balance that with being a parent?
Yeah. So my memoir has been out for 9 months, and I'm not Prince Harry. I'm not famous, right? Because celebrity memoirs sell, but I'm not a celebrity. If anything, I'm a D-list celebrity, right? And so I was like, okay, how do I do bottom-up marketing for me? And so I hired someone to help me get on 50 podcasts by the end of the year. You're one of them. And we were scheduled for 40 now, which is great. But it was like, okay, show up and find niche audiences. Do virtual book clubs. So if someone want me for 30 minutes and I show up to your book club, cool. So I've been doing that. So it's been marketing that. And also my paperback is coming out April 29th. So starting to think about a tour, but thinking about a tour that's really going to work for me. I guess I've been dancing with expectations a lot and realizing, my God, I've created these expectations. I've created these rules where I never win. This sucks. I want to win. And even on my book tour, my last stop was at the Smithsonian. I'm Susan. What is it that's going to be enough? You know what I mean? Is it Oprah? Is it Jimmy Fallon? Well, is it to win a Pulitzer? Because we all know I don't write highbrow, right? Because I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to win that Pulitzer. But the thing is, if I'm creating the rules and it's self-defeating and I'm miserable, why am I doing it? That sucks. So I've just been looking at my own worthiness. I've just been reading books about it. I read The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck. And it's just like, how do you lie to yourself? And how can you not do that so that you set yourself free, right? Which is like all the work I always do. So I've just been sitting with that, Ricky, because the paperback's around the corner. I am thinking about the next creative project. And I think the question is, what is going to be fulfilling, right? It's not what's the next badge to get. I've gotten a lot of badges. I've worked with a lot of brands. Cool. And now what? Because I think the shiny objects, like, there's always going to be another thing you haven't gotten, like whether it's like an EGOT. But these are all human created things to fill fulfillment, but you can determine that fulfillment.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It could be TV, it could be movies, it could be something else. Like you don't know yet. I like that you're describing that you're dancing with it, you're wrestling with it, you're trying to figure out what it is that's going to be meaningful to you. What are some first initial thoughts you have about what that could be?
of what's meaningful to me.
About like, as you've wrestled with this question of what is going to give you fulfillment and not just chase another shiny object or chase another conventional
Yeah.
understanding of what achievement means.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? Yeah.
I would love to give you something profound, but guess what? My body already got in the way and said, listen to me. And so right now I'm actually dealing with a health issue that has been pretty debilitating because I was gunning so hard.
Yeah.
I'm Aries ox. Nothing's enough. And then my body was actually, it was enough because I'm going to actually start breaking you down right now. And I'm going to actually slow you down because I've gotten this feedback a lot. Susan, you're hard on yourself. Enjoy the journey. And I'm like, I don't have time for that. And then now I have time for that because my body is actually preventing me from doing more, which is, I don't know, like, I feel like my body has forced a pause on me to slow down and be like, no, you're going to reflect now. So I think that's just like an interesting thing, which is sometimes we don't actually have the choice to choose.
Yeah.
My body has guided me a lot in my life. And in the prologue of my memoir, I talked about how I went to the ER twice because I was so stressed out about finishing it. And I keeled over. I couldn't walk. I couldn't stand. There was huge pain in my body. And it was like my body being like, okay, the way we're doing it right now, not working for us. So that's point number one, which is my body has forced me to slow down. I am thinking about my kid, who's 4.5. And I think about how my parents never had the time or the money to go on a school field trip, to make the holiday special. Like, they were working 7 days a week and we were poor. Like, like they did make things special, but there was a lot more on their plate and there was a lot of yelling. And so for me, it's like, hey, I do want to make the holiday special. Or I'm not going to have more than one kid. I'm one and done, I think. So it's how do I make his relationships really special with his friends, right? We're going to go to ice bumper cars. We're going to go visit the Christmas houses. So I'm the social lead. I'm the parent lead also in the family. And so I make sure that we're intentional with our time together as a family and that it's interesting, right? And that, like the movie Inside Out, there's core memories that you have. Have I planned a core memory lately? So there's part of that is like the enchanting phase of childhood, like until he's 13 is like a really golden time. And so I want to show up and be like a really awesome mom. So there's that. There's that sitting there. Okay.
Yeah.
You want amazing pasta shapes? We're going to go get amazing pasta shapes. And then the other part of me is I cannot just be defined as a parent. I think that kind of drives me crazy. I think that's why I don't want a second kid is because my art and my career is really a second kid to me. And I know that might be very American to be so defined by your work, but my work as an intergenerational healer, that's also my life purpose.
Yeah.
And so to have enough space for that and to also give the things that scare me oxygen is important. And so for me, I see stand-up comedy still, and I think about the absurdity of middle age and marriage, and I really want to talk about that. It's an offshoot of the work that I do. I see that, and I'm like, ooh, but I'm terrified, which means, Ricky, I should do it, but then I'm terrified. And does that make sense with my mom's schedule? It's not like we have a nanny and hella money, but I'm like, I'm so afraid, and I see there's something there. And also with like film and TV, I'm a genre jumper. And I tell stories across mediums. And I have 5 TV shows that I've written out that I'm like, I want to do these. I don't know how. I'm put feelers out there. I have lots of conversations with people. Do I know how it's going to happen? Did I know how the national tour of the theater show was going to happen? Did I know how I was going to get the book tour? Did I know how it was going to become an NPR Books We Love for 2024? No, I didn't know how, but I could see it. And I think for me, I use vision boards. I got 3 of them over here. They're so funny. I should send you pictures of them. But if I can, once I let the doubts fester, they always will. Then I say, can you go sit over there? Because I have some collaging to do. And then I make out the vision board. It starts to give me new vocabulary, more confidence, more clarity, more visuals around it. And then there's a point when I'm like feeling pretty stable. It depends where I am and like my period ovulation. But when I'm not feeling like super tender and crippled, like when I'm feeling like, yeah, world is my oyster and I can have it baked or raw with mignonette, then I go. So I think there's part of what I want to reassure listeners is that it is super messy. The creative process is super messy. Or I do get feedback like, wow, Susan, you're so confident and you can do all these things. And I'm like, I don't always feel that way. I don't. I really don't. But when there's something at stake, when there's an audience, when there's a date and time scheduled, because I'm a procrastinator, mama gonna turn on. You know what I mean? Because then I remember what is going to bring me joy. And that also, as one of my directors once said, nobody paying to see a rehearsal.
I love it. Yeah,
But you
I
have to
think
be gentle with the ebbs and flows, right? Because there are times when you can call on the masculine energy to produce and execute. And there are times when right now I'm feeling a little tender right now and my body is not doing very well. And this is the feminine time to receive support from people, to just, I don't know, stare at the ceiling and just be like, what do I think about that? It's okay to create spaces of emptiness to reflect so that you even know what direction you're steering the Titanic. Wrong metaphor.
this is amazing. I think that might be a good place to wrap, because it's such a beautiful picture of how messy it is, and
Awesome.
but also how beautiful it is. I think, like, I don't know. I think when people do podcasts and people like write things, like, we tend to want to give people easy answers, and we want to give people the version that after we've all figured it out, but we never show them like part of the figuring out is this contending, dancing, like you said. Dancing is probably better because it feels fun, but dancing with all the different expectations and hopes and dreams and fears, and then like letting it pull you in different directions, and listening to your body, looking at your kid, thinking about how you want to make his life better, and then also like watching yourself and like feeling yourself pulled in the direction of what gives you joy, and like creating time for that. That's amazing. I think that's a good takeaway, even though it might not be like super simple.
Yeah, because life isn't. I will say one thing. When I was really stuck with the book, it was this September before it was due in January. And I was so stuck. And then I did The Artist's Way. And a lot of people talk about The Artist's Way. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
And the morning pages was really great, but really the weekly artist states were really interesting. Are you actually giving yourself one thing that delights you a week? Because I think like when it's my birthday, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it that day or that week, where it feels really okay to listen to my wants and fulfill those wants. What would it look like if you did it once a week and if you did it by yourself? So you're not trying to accommodate people. Oh, I'm so over that. I'm still working on it. But there's something around with our own inner listening. Do we feed it? It's like a Tamagotchi, right? Are we like feeding it, giving it the oxygen and the nutrients that it wants? And then where does it go? Can we follow that to the next thing? I think as we hit our middle age, like these moments of like newness and spontaneity go away. Like you've eaten that, I don't know, beef bourguignon. You've eaten that omakase. Okay, you've done that. You've gone to Bali, whatever. But it's like, how do we find moments of glimmer and excitement and joy that is just not laced with drugs? Like, how do we do that? And then what new things will we discover?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Susan. I think that was good. And thanks for coming on to the podcast and being an inaugural guest. And where should people find you?
You can find me on my Instagram at Susan Lieu, Lieu, on my website, susanlieu.me. Get on my newsletter. You can watch 140 Pounds. You can stream it from my website if you'd like. And I also have a podcast called Model Minority Moms. It's about being everything for everyone else but yourself.
That sounds like a good topic to talk about. So, okay. Thanks for coming on. and
Thanks,
talk to you
Ricky.
next time.
Thank you for tuning in to Almost Flowing. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It helps us share these incredible stories with more people. Until next time, stay curious, take small steps forward, and keep finding your flow.